It was called the crime of the century.
One of the greatest peacetime spy dramas in the nation's history reaches its climax as Julius Rosenberg.
An act of espionage that altered the course of history during the Cold War era rested on the shoulders of a young married couple, Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. Their arrest and executions became symbolic of anti-communist sentiment and fear in the United States during the Cold War.
Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, a married couple convicted of espionage in 1951, were the first Americans to be sentenced to death for spying. Julius Rosenberg, born in 1918, was executed in 1953 at the age of 35. In his earlier years, Julius was in Army Signal Corps as a junior engineer. After the Army found out that he had lied about his membership to the Communist Party, they discharged him in 1945. Ethel Rosenberg, born in 1915, wanted to be an actress and a singer, but worked as a secretary at a shipping company. Both Julius and Ethel joined the Youth Communist League, where they eventually met and married. Later, in 1942, they became full members of the Communist Party. In an article from Famous Trials, Douglas Linder wrote, "The Rosenberg trial is a sum of many stories. A story of betrayal, a love story, a spy story, a story of a family torn apart, and a story of government overreaching. This trial proceeds with more than just guilty or innocence, but the true story of the Rosenbergs. After found guilty of espionage, the Rosenbergs lost everything, including their lives."
This controversial case was a vital factor of the Cold War in America, which led to McCarthyism. The Rosenbergs are viewed to be liberal and communist. They were accused of giving the Soviet Union top-secret information about the atomic bomb. Ethel's brother, David Greenglass, took a plea deal with the prosecution so that his sentence would be reduced. Instead of the death sentence or prison for life, he would only have to go to jail for 15 years. Although the Rosenbergs protested their innocence until the time of their death, they were still convicted in the trial in March 1951.
On March 29, 1951, the jury delivered a guilty verdict to the Rosenbergs for conspiracy to commit espionage. As Julius and Ethel Rosenberg received their sentence, the judge told them,
"I consider your crime a crime worse than murder. By your betrayal, you have undoubtedly altered the course of history to the disadvantage of our country. It is not in my power, Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, to forgive you. You are hereby sentenced to the punishment of death."
Many people believe that they were the victims of the flow of anti-communism in the United States and protested that the death sentence was a cruel and unnecessary punishment. President Dwight E. Eisenhower spoke for many Americans when he stated, "I can only say that by immeasurably increasing the chances of the atomic war, the Rosenbergs may have condemned to death tens of millions of innocent people all over the world. The execution of two human beings is a grave matter, but even greater is the thought of millions of dead whose deaths may be directly attributable to what these spies have done." Eisenhower took the nation's protection in mind when agreeing with the decisions of the executions of the Rosenbergs. President Eisenhower knew that if the Rosenbergs did not pay for the price for the crime they committed, the Soviets would have killed millions of Americans.
Yeah, punishment was definitely a product of, McCarthyism, these witch trials that were taking place. I think the FBI and J. Edgar Hoover had certain, ulterior motives. I think that their fates may have been, or their punishment might have been more in line with the other conspirators, 30 years, 15 years in prison. But I think that the decision to execute them was definitely a product of the Red Scare.